Sadnam. We are Jen and Ramtan from Heart Center Revolution.
Our intention with this podcast is to share the best of Kundalini yoga and conscious living with you so you can live a more heart-centered life. Satnam, and welcome to episode 20 of Heart Centered Revolution podcast. I am so excited to be back, and I appreciate all of your support and patience. We do the podcast, evenings and weekends kind of thing. So when life gets busy, it's hard to keep up and we fall behind. But we are back. We should be back next week as well. I think we're kind of back on track. Today will be a little bit of an unusual episode. It'll be another Just Jen episode. So you'll only hear my voice. We're going to go through the 5 stages of a spiritual path. It can be really helpful to know kind of which stage you're on in your spiritual growth, because it helps you know what to expect, kind of how to treat yourself. The best example I can give is if you're just starting out, you might hear other people talking about they practice every day and they meditate for hours at home, or, they've done a 2.5-hour meditation. And it's okay if you're beginning, that's not where you're supposed to be. So I think it's helpful to really accept where you're at and embrace where you're at, and then be aware of what the challenges are for your particular stage and what you can do to kind of move forward with grace and ease, because the spiritual path is not always graceful or easy. So I'm hoping that you get some insight as to where you are out of today's episode. And at the end of the episode, as usual, we have our breathing practice. Today we're going to do a breath cleansing series, and this will help balance your blood chemistry and your mental attitude. So I hope you enjoy that at the end of the podcast. And then the last thing for big picture, and one of the reasons we were late on this episode by about a week, maybe 10 days, is that we have an exciting announcement. We have an opportunity for you to deepen your practice. Coming up on April 23rd, we're going to launch a free 5-day course to really get grounded and established on the essential practices in Kundalini yoga. So I'll share more about that at the end of the episode. But if you don't make it there, you can go to kundaliniyogaessentials.com and read more about that free 5-day course. Awesome. Let's get started then talking about the stages. We're actually going to cover 5 stages and 4 fallacies on the spiritual path, or the path to wisdom. So the idea is that wisdom is established in stages. And so everyone's experience will be different. Different challenges will arise for you. But in the broader picture, we all have the same equipment, right? We all have a mind that functions somewhat similarly or has the same positive, negative, and neutral mind. We all have a soul and a spiritual being. So we go through some of similar phases. They just will manifest differently with each of us. Knowing the map, kind of the way to go from point A to point B, from being a novice to being a master, it can help reduce anxiety, like I was saying. So if you know where you're at in the stages and you have a certain difficulty come up, or you get in that comparison space where you're comparing your spiritual development with someone else's, it's not always helpful, and that's not going to help you proceed along your spiritual path of raising your consciousness and feeling more connected to your highest self. These steps also apply to other things that you're learning. I mean, a lot of what we're going to talk about applies to if you're learning a new language or an instrument, kind of things like that. It's just the process of learning and implementing something. You also, fortunately or unfortunately, you can't skip any stages. So there are things that you can do to progress through the stages more quickly if that's your intention, and without as much resistance or pain. But you can't skip a stage. And that's a good thing, because each stage has a teaching for you. It has a lesson. It's like these layers that build on top of one another. So you wouldn't want to skip one of those layers, even though the stage you're in right now might not be where you want to be eventually. That's the process. That's how it goes. So try to be at ease with it and accept where you're at, and then pay attention to how you can progress yourself forward. So we'll get into the stages now. So the first stage is called Sarampad, Sarampad, 2 separate words. And it's the novice stage. This is like when you get hooked on something and you feel that intense desire to explore it further. So it's like a honeymoon period where you're starting to consciously enter a relationship with your spirit and your spiritual path. It's kind of like those doors are opening for the first time. You feel blessed and you feel grateful. You are excited. You feel called to learn and to do and explore. You're really motivated, but you have little or no experience, which is a good thing in a way because you have no memories of how something is supposed to go. So everything is new and fresh, and you don't have any prior experience to compare it to. So you have no memory of prior successes or failures to guide you. And as a novice, you need really simple, direct rules that are absolute, so black and white. And this helps you avoid being overwhelmed with the exceptions and the possibilities. So it's just about learning the basic rules of how things work. So as a new driver, you would want to drive right on a relatively straight road that was well paved with good weather so that you can master the fundamental skills of how to drive. And then as you get more experience, you can take those skills and apply them to other contexts. If there's snow or ice on the road, different kinds of cars, things like that. So on a spiritual path as a novice, you learn quote unquote rules. So you might go to a retreat and there's a rule that you're not allowed to talk. Or in Kundalini yoga, you have to do these exercises for this specific amount of time in this order. And that doesn't necessarily change, but as you get more experience, you're able to notice when you can be more flexible with those things. Now, the job of the novice is to learn those rules and to follow them and to develop obedience. So don't worry, later in your path, you can be more creative with your practice. But if you're just beginning, don't worry about that. Just focus on following the instructions and experiencing things as they are taught. You can worry later about how they'll apply to your life or how you can be creative with your practice. At this stage, you want to develop discipline so that certain habits become automatic. So just like that driving analogy, in the beginning, you have to think about pushing on the gas, pushing on the brake, using the blinker, looking over your shoulder, checking your mirrors. But as you get experience, those things become automatic. So you can focus your attention on other things. You can broaden the scope that you're paying attention to. And that happens on a spiritual path as well. But in the beginning, it's important that you focus on the basics. You focus on what your body is doing, where you're supposed to be focusing with your eyes. And don't worry too much about, shifts in energy and the whole cohesion. And if you're not, quote unquote, getting like the result that the meditation is supposed to provide you or that the teacher's talking about, that is totally fine. That's just not where you're at. You're beginning. So just focus on the basic skills and trust that the results or expansion in consciousness that the teacher is talking about, that those things will come with experience. Because as you master those skills, then your attention can go to those things. So for the novice, you're brought into this stage by necessity. So you've had some sort of a pain or fear, and so you feel pushed, right, into a practice or into doing something different. But you also can be pulled by intuition. So you could see that someone else is having an experience in, that your spidey senses go off and you're like, ooh, that's for me. I want to learn more about that. Or you can feel that it's your destiny or your calling. So you might have a soul purpose that reveals itself that you're supposed to, study Kundalini yoga or read about shamanism or things like that. So you can be pushed by pain or you can be pulled by your intuition, if that makes sense, or pushed by fear or pulled by your passions. And I always recommend that. So if you have a little inkling or intuition that you're supposed to do something, just go ahead and do it. Because if it's a true calling for you, then your soul will orchestrate some sort of painful way for you to get there eventually. So you might as well just follow your intuition without waiting for that painful pushing to come. All right, so that is it for the first stage, which is the novice stage. You're just learning the basics. And then after some time there, if you focus on learning the rules and you stay consistent and obedient, then you'll move to Karampad. It's Karampad. And this is the apprenticeship phase. And this is where you develop more experience and you grow that experience. So this is when you start to become aware of the work that you need to do on yourselves in order to sustain a deeper relationship with your soul. So you've learned those basic, the fundamentals of what you're supposed to do. So then you start paying attention to, what work do I need to do? What do I need to let go of? What keeps coming up for me? Maybe in Kundalini yoga, you frequently cry during a meditation or during practice. Maybe you get angry afterwards. Maybe you have to, go down and take a nap afterwards. Those are insights into what work you need to do or what things you need to clear in order to move along your spiritual path. In this phase, you have a history of practice and experience that you could compare your current practice to. So every class you go to, every meditation you do, you have a history of experiences to compare it to. And this helps you develop a pattern and exceptions to those patterns. So you understand, every time I do breath of fire, this is how I feel. Or every time I do left nostril breathing, this is how my body feels. Every time I do right nostril breathing, this is how my body feels. And then you'll identify exceptions. So maybe you tried left nostril breathing when you were really angry and it didn't have the same effect. So you're just growing your learning and not really based so much on rules, but developing like what patterns and what exceptions there are to the practice that you're doing. In this stage, it's important to experience what you're learning. So in our example, Kundalini yoga, in many different settings. So I would suggest that you don't pick one teacher and always go to that one class. Have many teachers. At least sample many teachers. Every class you go to, you learn something new. And then also practice in different settings. Maybe try practicing at home. Maybe go to the beach and do something. Practice in different mood states. So if you're always waiting for you to be in the mood to do yoga, sometimes you miss great opportunities. So if you're feeling really upset or angry, try practicing then. And this will just develop or expand your knowledge of how these practices affect you in different circumstances and situations. This is also an opportunity because the steps that you're doing become more automatic. It's an opportunity to start paying attention to other sensations and other senses. It's also an opportunity to challenge yourself. So if you feel you're in this apprentice stage and you really like chanting meditations, this is a time to experiment with silent meditations. Try to strengthen your blind spot. Try to balance your practice. Instead of always leaning towards what's comfortable, then try to do something new and expand. We're trying to get a breadth of experience here and balance what you're doing. By doing these things, by really practicing in different locations with different teachers, in different moods, under different times of day, you start to develop a relationship to your practice that is not dependent on a particular teacher, a particular studio, or a particular time of day. Like you and your practice have a relationship that is monogamous, for lack of a better, that's just how I'm thinking of it right now. So you and your practice have this connection and relationship, and then you can take that relationship to any teacher, any studio, any mood that you have, and it can serve you in all of those settings. And this stage helps give you hardiness and resilience. It gives you a very strong foundation as you move into the next stage, because the next stage is where you're tested. All right, awesome. So the third stage, which is the third of 5, is called Shaktipad. It's Shaktipad. Shakti pod, PAD. And this is dubbed like the craftsman stage. And this is the stage where you experience doubt, but you also experience transformation. So this is oftentimes one of the longer stages and one of the more challenging stages because it brings up a lot. This is the most crucial stage. It's transformational. And this is where you have to determine whether you're going to stay in this stage, like stuck in Shaktipad, which actually isn't that pleasant. And I'll explain more about that why. Whether you're going to abandon this path altogether because it's not working out for you, or you commit to the path even though you're having doubts, and then you can break through your ego and you can break through to the next stage. So the number one thing you can do to help you in this stage is to commit to your practice. So the reason that this stage is challenging is because you've kind of had all these fun experiences, you've got all this stuff, and now you're at the point where you actually need to make some of those changes, right? You've identified the changes, you've probably released a lot, but this is where you either commit or you don't. And most of us jump back and forth from I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out. This is me, this is not me. I'm going to practice every day. I'm not going to practice every day. I'm going to take teacher training. I'm not going to take teacher training. And it's this back and forth that creates a lot of doubt and fear. This is also the stage where our identity is being challenged. So for Kundalini yoga, like I can speak from my experience, this is where you learn all these things and you start to have to shift your identity of, instead of being a person who does yoga, like this becomes a bigger part of your life. For me, it started changing, what foods and alcohol I put into my body, when I woke up and went to sleep, how I spent my time, who I associated with. And then your ego has this backlash of like, wait, what? Like, who are you? Who am I? It's a lot of change. It's a lot of shifting. And so at this stage, it's like you step on the gas and you practice. You're super into it. It's like the best thing ever. You feel great. And then your ego slams on the brakes. It's like, no, like that's too much change. You're going too fast. And it's this go, stop, that creates an unsettled feeling. It creates doubt and it creates disconnection because you're not sure who you are. So it's really important during this stage to identify if this path is what you want to continue on. You need to commit to it. You need to practice every single day. Whether it's 3 or 5 minutes, that's fine. But you just need to commit or let go of the expectation that you're going to, because this back and forth is just not all that helpful. It's said that in this stage, your struggle is I am not. They are not. It is not. We are not. So you're in a storm of doubt. And if you just can humble yourself, let go of your reservations and commit to the practice, then you can emerge successful. So if you're in this stage of like, it feels wishy-washy and unsure and like the ground under your feet when it comes to Kundalini practice, or even just, your identity in general feels rocky and unsteady, then commit to your practice. And that's just a sign that graduation is near. Like you're going to move to that next stage, which is where things get easier. But you have to pass through this stage of doubt, and it's kind of like pushback. It's explained that at this stage can be difficult because you've accumulated all the experience, you've tested the rules, you've stored up conscious and unconscious abilities and habits, and you can be overwhelmed by all of the possibilities and all of the things to do. Do I take a cold shower in the morning? Do I wake up 2.5 hours before sunrise? Do I recite Japji? Do I do Long Yak Onkars? Or do I do this breathing practice? Or do I do that? Or do I do this? And it's like you feel called to do so much and then you do nothing oftentimes. So that conflict creates doubt. But this stage is not all negative. There are some really fun parts of this stage. At this stage, you get to choose your own goal and your own journey. Well, in the past, you might have taken more, like your teachers take on more of a higher status in your mind. At this stage, you start to kind of become your own teacher. Like you're trying to feel and figure this thing out. You get to choose your own goal in your own journey. You also become willing to challenge the rules and risk new combinations and establish new patterns. So that's part of what this stage is all about, is at this point, like what the teachings say you're supposed to do. That you're supposed to, like I said, get up early, take a cold shower, practice for 2.5 hours, yada, yada. But at this stage, you identify your own goals, you identify what's going to work for you. But the key is then you have to commit to it. So you need to overcome your doubt and in order to commit to your practice. It's also at this stage that you start to see the bigger picture. So I'm just going to continue to use Kundalini Yoga as an example because that's what we're all here to learn about, but it applies to anything else you're learning. But for Kundalini Yoga, instead of seeing like breath of fire or a specific exercise, you start to feel what a whole Kriya feels like. Or instead of the physical sensations, you're starting to notice all the energetic, emotional, like you feel each exercise and each practice as a complete whole rather than individual pieces. Like not the mantra separate from the eye gaze, separate from the mudra, but you experience the impact of them all together. The fourth stage is called Sahejpad. So Sahejpad. And this is the expert stage. This is where you really start to get into your intuition and you see that practice as a whole. So it starts in the last stage, but in this stage, that's just what your practice looks like. For most of us, this will be our final stage. Most people don't make it to the fifth stage, which is essentially equivalent to enlightenment. So in this fourth stage, we call it the expert stage. It's a stage of ease, balance, and grace. You make a decision and it manifests. So you really don't have as much resistance or mental back and forth that you used to. You sense what the moment needs. You're able to hold space and allow things to unfold. You're enjoying the play of life. You focus on the goal. And every new challenge that comes up increases your skill. So you're able to see things so clearly that when a new challenge comes up, it's not creating doubt or resistance. You know that you can handle it. You know that it came into your life for a purpose. And you know that there's a lesson to be learned or a skill to be developed. You also, in this stage, you don't see individual parts like I was talking about before. You see everything as a whole. You see people as a whole human being with all of their experiences. And you're able to use your intuition more. You use your intuition to act and analyze. At this stage, you also have a good momentum. Like everything you fought to establish in Shaktipad is kind of habit. You just have the habits down that you need in your life, and you only make changes if you need to. It's not like you're grasping for something. You're in the flow, and then you make gentle changes as needed. In this stage, compassion is always present, and you don't feel threatened by personal gain or loss. And so you play the game of life powerfully and skillfully. So in most traditions and disciplines, it takes 7 to 10 years to move from an expert to becoming a master. So it takes about that time to get on the verge of this stage and the next stage. But like I said, on that spiritual path, not all of us are destined to get to the next stage, which is totally fine. If you're here at Sahejpad, the expert stage, you're doing just fine. Like the next stage is above and beyond. Okay, for the last stage on the spiritual path to wisdom is called Satpad. Satpad, 2 words. This is where you're the master, and it's where you don't even have intuition anymore. It's become an instinct. So this connection with source is so natural and so powerful that there's a merger. So it's almost like your individual identity kind of disappears. And so that boundary between yourself and the world is gone. So this is what people would call enlightenment. In this stage, there is no separation between the duty of the world and the choice of your own will. So what you want for yourself, what you feel desire to do is automatically in the best interest of all involved. You don't have to think about it or contemplate that. It's just there's this merger between your will and the divine will. You experience in this stage equality and transcendence. And this is the stage of truth or reality. So you're experiencing the truth that we are all one. At this stage, if we're going to continue like the driving metaphor, the driver becomes one with the car. And so it's almost like, and this doesn't really happen, but you think turn left and the car turns left. And so that's where you're at when you're on this fifth stage in the spiritual development. And you not only perceive the whole of a person or of a situation, but you're actually able to merge with everything that's out there. So this person is spiritual and in alignment without being forced or without effort. And they can be spontaneous, but not impulsive. And they can be creative, playful, and completely real. I guess the best way to describe it is this is where that merger happens, where you feel merged with the task at hand. If you're talking about a task, or if you're talking about spiritual development, you feel that merger with the world and everyone around you. All right, so those are the 5 stages on the spiritual path. And then there are 4 fallacies. And so these are little lies that our ego tells us that are really helpful to be aware of, because if you're having one of them, don't shame yourself or anything. They're perfectly common, but be aware that they're there. And so the first fallacy is the one level fallacy. And this is to act as though there's only one level of the spiritual path. So with this fallacy, you might learn the basics of something and then convince yourself that that's all there is and not go deeper. And so the cure for this one is just to remember that there's always more to learn. The second fallacy is a shortcut fallacy. And this is when students believe they can skip ahead in this process because they can perceive or kind of understand and feel to a certain extent what the next stage might feel like, or even the one after that. Maybe they have glimpses of that. And so you convince yourself that you can skip and move further ahead than where you actually are. By doing this, you're like imitating the real levels of expertise and not being authentic to where you are in your journey. And when you do that, then you're unable to hold steady in your practice when the real pressure of life tests you. You're not able to stay connected to your consciousness or your spiritual beliefs and stay grounded and stay connected when things go awry or when difficulties happen, because you're trying to be further along the path than you actually are. So the solution to this is just pay attention to the stage that you were in and let the next stage emerge naturally. Don't try to force anything. Okay, the third fallacy is a cross-domain fallacy. So this is when students feel like expertise or mastery in another area and will be transferred to a new area. And so sometimes that does happen, but to assume that it's going to be the case is a fallacy. When you're starting a new line of learning or a path of exploration or wisdom or practice, you need to have beginner's mind in that lane, even if you're an expert in another. And that's exactly what you can do if you notice you have this fallacy. You can remember to keep a beginner's mind and be open and ready for instruction in the undeveloped areas in your skill set. All right, the last fallacy is called the bootstrap fallacy. And this is when a student believes they can declare themselves complete, like they no longer need a teacher, they're going to lead themselves. And it's kind of when you start to get some traction on the spiritual path, then your ego, you get this spiritual ego that comes in that's like, I don't need a teacher, I know what I need to do. And that's one of the fallacies. And so we almost always need a teacher of some sort. But the teacher might not be a person. It might be a particular mantra or a book or a practice. Like as you evolve down the path, what your teacher is will evolve. But it's important to have something guiding you. And so that's what you do at this stage. Or if you notice that you have this fallacy, you want to cultivate a teacher or a mentor and continue to be challenged and to learn. Our pranayama for today is actually a series of breathing practices. We're going to do some breathing through the left nostril, then right nostril, some breath of fire, and then alternating. So again, breaths, we've done all of these before, but we're going to put them together into a short series here. This series is to balance your blood chemistry and your mental attitude. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. So go ahead, and wherever you're seated, you can root down your sit bones, open up your heart center, lift your shoulders up, back, and down. Elongate your spine so you're sitting extra tall. The crown of your head is lifting up to the heavens. Chin is gently tucked down and back. Let's take an inhale here and an exhale. Just let everything go. One more like that. Inhaling deeply. Exhaling with a sigh. Beautiful. Since we're doing a series, we're going to do 4 separate types of breath. For the first one, keep your eyes closed, focused at the third eye. Bring your right hand up to your face. Use your right thumb to gently close your right nostril and begin taking long, deep breaths through your left nostril. Inhaling deeply and exhaling completely. Finish your last breath, and then we'll take a rest. Beautiful. On your next inhale, bring your left hand up and breathe through your right nostril. Inhaling deeply. Exhaling completely. So your left thumb is plugging your left nostril, and you're inhaling and exhaling through your right nostril. On your next breath, just bring your hands down and we'll relax, breathing regularly through both nostrils. On your next breath, begin breath of fire, which is a rapid inhale and exhale from the navel. So you'll actually pump your navel and the breath will come in and out through your nose. It sounds like this. So focus on pumping your navel in, which is the exhale. So focus on the exhale, make that powerful. And then the inhale will happen naturally. So continue with breath of fire if you haven't been already. Eyes remain closed and focus at the third eye if that is safe for you in your environment. Double check your posture. Make sure your heart is open, spine is long, shoulders are up, back, and down. Check that your face is relaxed. The power of the breath comes from the navel center. Let's all inhale deeply. Suspend the breath briefly. Exhale. We'll rest for a few seconds before we begin our last breathing pattern. Beautiful. We're going to do alternate nostril breath a little bit differently than we've done before. So bring your right hand up to your nose. Go ahead and use your thumb to plug your right nostril and inhale through your left. Suspend the breath briefly. Move the hand so that your right thumb releases the right nostril and your pointer finger plugs the left nostril, and you exhale through the right. And then we're going to move the hand again. So we inhale through the left. And exhale through the right. Inhale left. Exhale right. Continuing on. Nice, complete, deep inhales, full exhales, completely emptying the lungs, inhaling through the left nostril, exhaling through the right nostril. Go ahead and take one more. Wherever you're at, after you exhale, inhale deeply through both nostrils. Suspend the breath for a moment. Exhale, release the hands, relax them in your lap. Close your eyes if they're opened. Just relax and meditate. Focus on the third eye. Connect with your emotional, spiritual, and mental state. And see what impact that brief breath cleansing series had on you. And when you're ready, you can blink open your eyes. Okay, that is it for the 20th podcast episode for Heart-Centered Revolution. I can't believe it's been 20 already. So as I teased or talked about in the beginning, I wanted to share an exciting opportunity we have for you. So we asked you guys to do that survey a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago now. And we are so appreciative to all the people that did, and we totally heard you. So we understood from that you guys love Kundalini yoga, but it can be hard to make it to class regularly and hard to know how to integrate it into your life. And so that is why we created a 5-day course. So when you sign up for this course, every day for 5 days, so it's Monday, April 23rd to that Friday. Every day you'll get an email with a 15 to 20 minute video, and the video will have 2 techniques. So kind of like the ones we do here on the podcast, but the techniques we chose will be more varied, obviously, because you'll be able to see us. So we're doing, some mantra, some breathing, a meditation, some kriya, physical exercises. And they're like the most foundational practices in Kundalini yoga. So we've got breath of fire in there. We've got Sat Kriya in there. We've got long Ekongkars as a meditation. So we can really teach you how to do these basics correctly, because then they're incredibly powerful. And if you have them as tools, like in your back pocket, these are things that can create massive shifts for your energy levels and your mood in just a minute or 3 minutes or 7 minutes. So it's a way that you can begin and learn to incorporate yoga throughout your day. And like I said, it's just kind of an extension of the practices we do here on the podcast. It's just a little bit more organized and we chose like the best of the best. So the things that come up in class over and over, so that you can make sure that you know how to do them correctly, and then that you feel confident doing them throughout your day. And as part of the course, we will also have a private Facebook group. So any student who's in the course can be added to the Facebook group, and that'll really be an opportunity for you guys to connect with one another, but also to connect with us on a more personal level. So one of the best parts of practicing Kundalini yoga is going to the studio, and especially if you have a studio that's primarily Kundalini, the people there are incredible, and it's like finally meeting your tribe. because out in the world, those of us who practice and are further into it, we just don't quite fit in. We're like square pegs in a round hole, right? But you go to a Kundalini yoga studio and people speak your language and are so loving and so open. And as we venture to teaching online and through the podcast, we want to have a way to develop a community, even with the students that we teach digitally. And so a Facebook group seems like the best way to do that. So all of this is free. Just sign up by April 23rd. And you can go to the website, which is KundaliniYogaEssentials.com. Again, the website is KundaliniYogaEssentials.com. And there's a little bit more information there and you can sign up. Or if you can't remember that and you can remember Heart-Centered Revolution, you can go to our website, and on the right-hand side, like in the right-hand column, there's a place to sign up there on most of the pages on our website. So it's KundaliniYogaEssentials.com, or just head to our website and you can sign up there. And we would be so excited. We really want to get to know you guys better. I can see that people are listening, and I hear from listeners all the time, and it's incredible, but we're looking to take the next step with you guys. And so please join us by visiting those two websites. Okay, we love you, and we will see you next week. Bye.